JLF's Brave New World welcomes you back to our second session of the day. Our earlier episode today was Yoga in a Time of Crisis with Sir James Mallison in conversation with Yashaswani Chandra. Those of you who've missed our earlier episodes with Peter Carey, Jhumpa Lahiri, Siddharth Mukherjee, Chinmay Tumbe, Prayag Akbar, Edmund de Waal, Alain de Botton, Tina Brown, and so many others, you can catch them on our Facebook page, JLF Lit Fest, or on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Lit Fest JLF. Our second session of the day is Margaret Atwood, The Science of Storytelling. Margaret Atwood is in conversation with Megha Majumdar. One of the greatest writers of our times, Margaret Atwood speaks of the power of language, the science of storytelling, and the challenges of the present. Margaret Atwood, whose work has been published in more than 45 countries, is the author of more than 50 books of fiction, poetry, critical essays, and graphic novels. Her latest novel, The Testaments, is a co-winner of the 2019 Booker Prize. It is the long-awaited sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, now an award-winning TV series. Her works of fiction include Cat's Eye, the finalist for the 1989 Booker Prize, Elias Grace, for which she won the Giller Prize in Canada and the Premio Mondello in Italy, The Blind Assassin, the winner of the 2000 Booker Prize, the Mad Adam Trilogy, and Hackseed. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Peace Prize of the German Book Trade, the Franz Kafka International Literary Prize, the Penn Center USA Lifetime Achievement Award, and the Los Angeles Times Innovators Award. Margaret Atwood, welcome all the way from Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us on JLF's Brave New World. Speaking with Margaret Atwood today is Megha Majumdar. Megha Majumdar was born and raised in Kolkata, India. She moved to the United States to attend college at Harvard University, followed by graduate school in social anthropology at Johns Hopkins University. She works as an editor at Catapult, and A Burning is her first book. Ladies and gentlemen, please do comment and ask questions by typing it in the comment section. Do also follow our handles, GLF Litfest on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get notified on the upcoming sessions. In case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues or our broadcasts freeze, please, you can find them on the YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF, and we promise to post the entire episode again on Facebook and, of course, on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret Atwood and Megha Majumdar.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
I'm delighted to chat with icon Margaret Atwood, and we're going to chat for 35 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes in which we'll take questions from the audience. First of all, big thanks to Namita, Shonjoy, and everyone at JLF for organizing this virtual edition. And we were just talking a few minutes ago, Margaret, about how you went to the Jaipur Literature Festival a few years ago. What was that like?
It was amazing. It was, first of all, it's free, unlike a lot of things. So it's hugely well attended. And it is an open free speech space. So people just pile into it. And it has a huge variety of speakers. And then it has, of course, the added excitement of being in Rajasthan. So we had elephants. You don't get elephants at every literary festival.
That's true. You have written speculative dystopian fiction that feels chillingly real. So I want to start with a couple questions about your imagination of the future. And I think a question that is on everybody's minds right now is, when the pandemic passes, what will we do differently as a society?
Well, people talk about returning to normal, but time only flows one way. So it will be a different kind of normal, and I expect it will be a more thoughtful normal. There's a lot of writing and talk right now about the fact that we're all in this together. We're unified around the world in a way that once was just not true. And we are also part of nature. So nature isn't something over there. It's something we live within. And usually we think, lions and tigers and bears over there, us over here. But nature is much more than things we can see, as we have just discovered. So we're probably going to live more thoughtfully in relation to nature and go back to earlier religious traditions which taught exactly that. So we are going to have more respect for the natural world, and we're going to be thinking more about how to repair the damage we have done while also benefiting people who live in those regions. And if you want to see some of that kind of thing, you can go to Project Drawdown, which is a website that talks about earth repairing strategies that also make life better for people and will have the net effect of drawing carbon down out of the atmosphere. So that's one of the things we'll be doing. Another thing we'll be doing is thinking about how we've been living. And we've been doing a lot of things remotely now. In fact, we've been doing everything remotely. So we're not going to continue to do everything remotely, but I think we will do remotely more things than we did before, because we will be able to save time, money, distance, and energy emissions that way.
Among all of the changes that we're talking about that have taken place during this pandemic, one kind of frightening strain that has shown itself is this strain of anti-scientific thinking. And I was wondering, as somebody who really...
Oh, you froze.
In your writing, what do you think is the role of storytellers in pushing back against anti-scientific thinking?
Well, let's just talk about what science is and isn't. It's a way of describing the world, which is based on, we hope, fact, but it is constantly correcting itself. Science is constantly finding that some of the things it thought were facts actually aren't. So it's an ongoing process, and the reason some people don't like it is that they want certainty. And they want to know, is this true or is it not true? So we're finding out isn't a good answer for them. But when it comes to viruses and how they spread, science really it knows. It knows how this virus gets into your cells. It knows how the virus takes over your cells and turns them into virus factories, and then how it explodes the cell from within. So that can be seen. Mm-hmm. So the people who don't want to believe in any of that are really saying we want to go on with life the way we were living it before. And that would be all very well for them. It's their choice. But unfortunately, it also means that they have elected to spread it to other people. So I would say my right to do what I want ends at the part where it threatens your life. Storytellers probably are not who exactly we're going to turn to right now, unless they're writing about what it's like being in the situation and what happens to people who elect not to believe what scientists are clearly telling them. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be cautionary tales and life in a crisis. And in that sense, everyone is their own storyteller. So we all know what we are experiencing. I expect a lot of people are writing journals. Those will be very interesting to look back on later. So I think, what storytellers can do is communicate in fairly clear language. Take out the technicalities, make it short. My short form about politicians who are who have chosen not to believe what scientists have told them is, they lied, you died. That's 4 words.
Do you think writing about dystopias can be a way of bringing about change?
Well, dystopian fiction, which describe man-made unpleasant societies, and this virus is not man-made. It had dystopian effects, but it wasn't planned. Nobody said, let's have a pandemic, hooray. So dystopian societies are like blueprints of a house you haven't built yet. So people read them, and what the reader is really being asked to think is this the house you want to live in? And if the answer is no, take a different road, design a different house, decide that you will live in that better house rather than this dystopian house that has been described to you. So unfortunately, we're not very good at building heaven. It has been tried, but we're quite good. We're quite good at building hell, and most dystopian details are drawn from history. You know, they've already been done.
Exactly, and this isn't the first time that you're experiencing quarantine. You have experienced quarantine before as a child.
Yes, well, people who are as old as I am grew up at a time when a lot of these vaccines were not available. So quarantine was a pretty frequent thing to see. You would see a great big yellow or red sign on somebody's house saying quarantine, and nobody could go in and nobody could come out, and people delivered things to the front door as we are doing now. And people died. In fact, a lot of children died of these diseases like diphtheria and polio, for which there were not yet any vaccines. So then generations came along that did get vaccinated, and they weren't used to occasions like this. So young people are thinking, oh, nothing like this has ever happened before. But in fact, it was regular before these diseases were brought under control. Smallpox was a huge killer before vaccination became widespread, and it's enormously infectious and almost always fatal. So people died in droves. Yeah. So I'm kind of used to it. And now we're going to have a whole generation of young people who've had this experience, and if it happens again, they will know much better what to do.
You mentioned how lots of people are keeping journals now, and that's probably a valuable thing to do. And you've also written about all of the other things you are doing, from knitting to making fire starters. What advice do you have for people looking for creative outlets through this?
Okay, keeping a journal will, number one, make you feel less anxious, and number two, it'll be really interesting to read later. But I think the main thing is to take the focus off yourself and either onto an activity that's taking up your energy, or to helping other people, or to an activity that's helping other people. So one must keep saying, this isn't just about me. You know, and if you're in a house, if you've got food, if you're not ill, you're better off than a huge number of other people. So that's comforting to think. And it's also comforting to think that in that case, you have agency to help other people. So pick something that you can do. Don't try to save all the world at once. That's not possible. But pick one thing that you can do, and then just do it. I think it's also useful to have a schedule so that you are not just in your pajamas all day on the sofa, worrying, watching the news, and eating potato chips. It's counterproductive.
You've been doing some really big things during this time, like you've been part of a really valuable initiative called Canada Performs. Can you tell us about that, and perhaps any lessons for those in India who might be looking for ways to support the arts like JLF is doing?
Yeah, so Canada Performs is an initiative by the National Arts Center in Ottawa. And it began as a way of giving live performance artists a platform because, of course, they couldn't do live performances anymore. So they were doing musicians and actors and singers. And I then said, well, you know, a lot of writers, especially writers who are having spring books, they're supposed to be having book launches, they can't have live. They're performers too, because normally they would be going around giving live performances of their work. So we got them included in, and Facebook very kindly kicked some money into that program to allow the authors, the spring list authors, to have a platform. And I kicked it off with Adrienne Clarkson, who is our former Governor General and an old pal of mine. And we did an online show in which we actually didn't have any of the books, and we hadn't read many of the books. So all we could do was talk about the books that we had looked at online that we thought we might like to read. So we talked about those and why we might like to read them. And we put that list up, and that's how we kicked off that Authors Live segment of Canada Performs.
And do you think you have any advice to offer for those in India who would like to do something similar?
Well, the internet is yours. You know, here we are talking about Zoom. Maybe JLF could do a spring book list authors segment to help people who can't do book launches in the ordinary way to launch their books online. And of course, authors who have social media accounts can, for instance, tweet books such as this one, which is yours. Congratulations.
You're so kind. Thank you.
Here it is. Yes, a shocking tale. I was very interested in it, and I think it has some cautionary lessons for us, and it does involve a social media mishap, which gets the person who does it in a lot of trouble. Yeah, a lot. Now, don't tell me you based this on a true thing.
I can't believe you read my book. This is so gracious of you. Thank you.
why would I not read your book? It has such a beautiful orange cover. The other book that I read is this one, and I'm thinking of doing a little virtual travel list of books that take you to places that you can't go right now. And this is about the Jaipur Literary Festival. It's called Jaipur Journals, and it's by Namita Gokali, who has been very instrumental in putting that together. So you can travel to the festival by reading this book. And the third one that I'll mention that a lot of people would be interested in is famous bookshops of the world. And he has gone and visited them all. So Bookshops, A Reader's History, and it's Jorge Carrion. This is the English translation, but we can't travel right now, but we can travel in books.
Yeah, that looks like a beautiful book. You've said that you are so interested in how technology influences storytelling. What do you think are the possibilities of this Zoom and video calling age? Are you seeing people use them in fun ways?
Yes, we have a project in Canada right now, which is a way of putting on a play via Zoom. Now, it has to be particular kinds of plays. I shouldn't just say Zoom, I should say multi-platform online possibilities. So this particular play has got 6 actors in it, and it's very appropriate because it's the 6 men who were left behind during the Scott Antarctic expedition and found that they were supposed to be collecting rock specimens or something, and their pickup boat didn't arrive. So they had to get through the Antarctic winter with really no support. And they did. None of them died. And the play really describes what they went through. So we think we're in lockdown. They were really in lockdown. They were in an ice house they had made, and they were eating nothing but seals and penguins, which gave them all diarrhea inside their ice house. You can imagine how awful that was. But a play like that is really perfect for presenting online, because you can show these 6 actors all in their own houses, and you can have them all online at once. So plays with small numbers of characters and no sword fighting scenes be perfect for
does sound
presenting online.
perfect.
Yeah, I think people are going to start writing for the medium. You know, a new medium arrives, people start playing with it and getting creative with it, and seeing what they can do with it. It's
Speaking
like
of writing,
sonnet, a limited form. It has rules, but within that form, you can become very inventive.
mm-hmm. Speaking of writing, I know many people are so curious to hear, what does the seed of a book look like in your mind? How do you imagine and plot out your books?
All right, it's different. First of all, I never went to creative writing school. I'm too old. There weren't any. I think there was only one. It was in Iowa, and I'd actually never heard of it at that time. So I never was told anything about how to write. So it could be a conversation, it could be a scene, it could be an image, it could be just a little visual item that starts off a book. And sometimes I will start with that, and that thing will move quite far back into the book. So I may have written it first, but it will move along and become something that happens later. And sometimes it will be a physical object that transforms while I'm writing the book into something else, a different physical object. And sometimes it will just disappear. It may have been the seed, but
Do you mean
like a lot, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, what kind of objects do you mean?
Well, in one of them, it was a ceramic bowl, and it turned into a vase full of somebody's ashes, like
Wow.
that.
That makes sense. And you've written across so many genres. You've written fiction, nonfiction, poetry, children's books. I'm so curious to hear if there are storytelling rules that you follow across genres.
All right, I think there's one main rule, and that is you have to get the reader interested in what you're writing. So when I work with other people's writing, which I do a little bit from time to time, I only work, if it's a novel, I only work with the first 5 pages. Because reality is, close your eyes. Close. Okay, you're walking into a bookstore. There's your book. It's in the bookstore. You're a reader. You've never heard of this writer, but it has an attractive orange cover and a zippy title. Those are important. So it has an attractive orange cover and a zippy title, and you, the reader, you pick it up. What's the first thing you do? If you're like most people, no. If you're like most people, you might look at the author's photo, but you're more likely to you'll probably look at both these things. You look at the inside front flap. And the inside front flap will have a brief description of the book, which you, the author, will have had to rewrite, because somebody at the company will have written it and sent it to you. And usually that person is an intern. So this is one of the most important things if you want somebody to read your book. So you will have rewritten it, you will have corrected the characters' names, you will have taken off the part at the end where it blows the plot, and that's the intro. So you read that, and then if you're sufficiently interested, you read the first page. All right. If the first page doesn't hook you, you're not going to turn to page 2. So 5 pages, if you've gone 5 pages, you'll probably buy the book. Okay, if you're an editor or an agent, if you can get through the first 5 pages and you're sufficiently interested, you'll read 25. If the 25 sufficiently interested, you'll read 50. And then the book is a serious possibility. But you know this because you work with a publishing company. Yes.
I do.
So
Yes.
the first 5 pages, give me a reason. It's the ancient mariner thing. The ancient mariner stops the wedding guest. There's 3 wedding guests, but he only stops one. So that's his reader, as it were. He has something to tell that reader that the reader needs to hear. The reader says initially, don't bother me, I've got other things to do. But the ancient mariner is sufficiently compelling that he hypnotizes the wedding guest into listening to him. Well, that's what you basically have to do. You have to go, you need to hear this. You need to hear this. And you need to hear it either because it's got a message just for you, because this is something new that you've never read before, because it's a compelling story, because the character interests you and you want to know what happens to them, all of those reasons. But hook me in the first 5 pages. You need to do that as a writer.
I love that you brought up the rhyme of the ancient mariner. And I think a lot of us who are watching from India will remember that we had to study that poem in school.
There was a reason why you had to do it, because you were preparing to be a writer, and it's about storytelling.
All makes sense now. I think we're going to open it up to audience questions. We have a lot of them pouring in. Here's one from Rijula. How has your revision process changed over the years?
Computers were invented just for me, because before they were here with us, you actually cut and pasted. So you used scissors and glue. So I used to cut out my manuscripts and paste them, move things around. And now you can do that on the screen. But that's why it's called cut and paste, because people used to actually cut and paste. So revision means revision. You're seeing it again. You have to come to your manuscript as if you're the reader, not as if you're the writer. And if you're the reader, you don't yet know what happens. A writer can never read their own book, really. But because you already know what happens, you've peaked. But during revision, you have to pretend I have never seen this page before. And therefore, what is wrong with it? And I still work on paper with them, with the pencil, when I'm doing the final revisions, because you see things better that way.
That makes a lot of sense. And I still see pictures of people revising in that way, laying out pages on the ground. Here's a question from Vrinda and Nidhi, who ask, what was the starting point for Handmaid's Tale?
Okay, the starting point for Handmaid's Tale was threefold. Number one, my study of 17th century Puritan theocracy in New England, one of the foundational stones of America. Number two, my interest in sci-fi and speculative fiction as a teenage person, actually quite a young teenage person. I read a lot of it. And I'd always wanted to write a book like that, but didn't feel I was quite ready until The Handmaid's Tale. And number three, the rise of the religious right in the 1980s in the United States. And my failure to believe people who said it can't happen here. So anything can happen anywhere given the circumstances. We're never exempt. There isn't something that says this will never happen where you are. So after that, then of course my experience during the 20th century, growing up in the Second World War, I've always been interested in dictatorships and how they get a hold, how they maintain themselves, and how they fall apart, and what hooks people into them. You know, why some people think, hey, this might be a good idea. So one of the rules of dictatorships is once they're in, they're kind of hard to get rid of. So don't do it if you have a choice.
All rings so true right now.
Alas, it does.
Sarah asks, what kinds of stories are you looking forward to reading that are coming out of this pandemic?
That is going to depend on the inventiveness and skill of the people who write them. So we know a lot about behavior during pandemics because pandemics have been with us since recorded history. They're very old things. The difference between old ones and ours is that we know what is causing this one. And imagine being in an ancient one where people just didn't know. They thought, well, it's because of Oedipus. The gods are angry. Apollo, god of mice, is shooting invisible arrows at us, or some version of that. We've done something bad. So maybe we have done something bad, but that's not the immediate cause of getting an infection from a virus. Anyway, we know more about it. I think it's really going to depend on, all right, from whose point of view is the writer going to write their book? How are they going to get us interested? It's the first 5 pages story. Are we going to say, oh, this is another pandemic novel? No, not interested, read enough of those. Tell me something new.
And here's another craft-related question. Kostav asks, how do you plan an ending? Does it change as the story evolves, or do you have a fixed ending in mind that you work toward?
I never really have, let me put it this way. I usually think I know what the ending is going to be, and I'm usually wrong. So some people have their entire book all planned out. And if you're writing a murder mystery, you have to do that. You have to know from the beginning who done it, because you have to sprinkle the fake clues and the wrong pathways throughout the book. It's a game between you and the reader. Will they guess? Will they guess before you tell them? Will they know before Hercule Poirot assembles everybody in the drawing room? But that's not the kind of book I write, unfortunately. I like reading them, but I can't write them. So yeah. I'm more like a mud pie maker. So I start out with some mud, I make a mud pie. It's not a very good one. I squash the mud up again and rearrange it, and that goes on throughout the writing of the book. So unless I'm surprising myself as I go, I might lose interest.
Yeah.
So part of writing a book for me is describing, and it's discovering what's going on. Why am I writing this? Why am I telling you the story?
Yeah. That might be related to a question that Simranjit asks, which is that so many people are having trouble writing right now. What's your personal remedy for writer's block?
Are they distracted because they're anxious, or are they afraid of the page? Okay, let's say afraid of the page. So usually when people are afraid of the page, they're afraid of some person in their life or persons unknown reading their book and not liking it. That's probably what they're afraid of. So here's the page. It's got nothing on it, and nobody's watching you until you decide to show people what you've written on that page. It's a secret between you and the page. So if you write on that page and don't like what you've written, the waste paper basket is your friend. You can just crumple it up and throw it away and start again. So just plunge in. Nobody's watching. It's a lot like practicing the piano in a soundproof room. You're going to make mistakes, but nobody's hearing them. So don't be embarrassed or shy. Just go for it, and you will surprise yourself. You'll surprise yourself at what you write. Remember, nobody sees it until you say so. We hope.
That's very encouraging.
We hope nobody's going to sneak in and read your bad manuscript before you've revised it.
Here's a somewhat different question about government. Iram asks, do you think scientific management will work better than political management? I guess it's a question about, do you see new styles of governance emerging from this?
Oh boy, what a question. I don't think we'd necessarily be better off in the hands of a governing body composed of scientists. I think we'd be better off in the hands of a governing body composed of people who listen to scientists. But scientists they have a specialist focus. You know, if you want to know about viruses, you go to somebody whose specialty is viruses. They've done nothing all their life but study viruses. But they may not be terribly aware of something like a housing crisis. You know, so government has to have a broad range of interests because people live in so many dimensions. So what you eat, where you live, your healthcare system, who's paying for it, what about international trade and business, what about our treatment of the planet? So politicians are not specialists, but they should listen to specialists.
Mm-hmm.
They themselves have to be connected with people, how people really live, what their needs actually are. If they're good politicians, if they're bad politicians, they don't care about that. They just rearrange things so that them and their friends make lots of money. And that's the kind of politician you don't want to have.
Speaking of bad politicians, here's a question from Ekta who asks, do you think this pandemic is going to make it easier for governments to have greater surveillance and control over people?
They're trying their best. And quite often when these kinds of controls go in, it's hard to get rid of them. So income tax came in World War I as a temporary measure.
I did not know that.
Yes, it did. Yes, there were taxes before on all kinds of things. Once upon a time, there was a tax on beards. There was a tax on bachelors. There was a tax on windows. You could rearrange people's behavior by the kinds of taxes you put on things. But a tax on income, that was an early 20th century so-called temporary measure. But it was so agreeable to the politicians that you can say that they kept it on.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question from Sumit, going back to craft. How do you craft your characters? Do you take someone from real life and then mold them, or are they complete figments of your imagination?
Well, there's no such thing as a complete figment of your imagination, because we learn about people from other people, and whether those are people in real life or whether they're people in books or whether they're people in movies, they're all people. And even if the novel is about rabbits, it's still about people because we don't have a choice about that. So hobbits are people. Darth Vader is a person. Yeah, so it's all people, and we gather our ideas about people from a large thing called the people sphere, and that would be fictional people, your family, other people you've known, stuff you've read in newspapers about people. So everywhere, but I do try not to be too individual about them. So unless I know that there are several instances of a kind of behavior, I don't put a specific unique thing in. And I also look up in the phone book to make sure that a person with that name doesn't actually exist in that place.
Um, Pushpanjana has a question about memoir writing. She asks, do you think this pandemic will lead people to start memoir writing? And perhaps I'll rephrase that a tiny bit to ask what advice you would have for people who are seeking to write personal essays, personal stories at this time.
Well, write them by all means. Memoir writing has been a thing for some years. And it gives me a big chuckle when I find a book of memoirs by somebody who's 30. I think, excuse me, you're not very old. But of course, when you're 30, you think you are really, really old. I certainly thought that. Oh my goodness, it's the end of the world. 30. It's all over. Yeah, so yeah, it's the same rule. Tell me something interesting. So have you ever been stuck on a bus beside somebody who's got all their pictures of their trip to Paris? Here's me in front of the Eiffel Tower. Here's me along the Seine. Here's me with my Uncle Charlie, whom you don't know and you never will know, but I'm showing you this picture of him and not telling you anything interesting about him. So it's the same as any story. Memoirs are stories too. Tell me something that isn't about what you did on Monday and then Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. You can do that if you can make it interesting enough. An English country woman's diary, ordinary life during the Tudors. You know, we're very happy to have those accounts now, but at the time they were just daily life stuff that everybody knew. We're interested in reading it now because we don't know those things. What did you eat when you got up in the morning? Yeah, so it's like that. The story we want to hear because it's interesting or because it's things we want to know and don't know.
I think we will take one more question and then wrap up. And perhaps this is a good one to end on. It's from Sanskriti, who asks about womanhood. I think you capture womanhood in its truest, rawest form. How do you write about women so powerfully?
So women are people. Big shock. They're women are human beings. They're part of the people sphere. And in that people sphere are all kinds of people. And when people say women as if they were sort of undifferentiated and all the same, the answer to that is no more than other people, such as men. So they have certain things in common, but then a lot of differences. So how old is the woman? Where does she live? How tall is she? And is that short or tall in her society? I hate to break this to you, but once upon a time I was the average size. Now it appears I'm quite short. Other people got taller. I don't know how that happened. So when did she grow up? How rich was her family? What sort of country does she live in? What kind of city? Or does she live in a city? Does she live in the country somewhere? How does that make life different for her? Is she struggling? What are her opportunities? Does she have children? Are the children numerous? Are they well? Are they sick? Are there problems with them? You know, all of these things are going to be different depending when and where, when, and you know, who this individual person is. So I do write about women quite a bit. I also write about other people such as men. And I think again, it's a matter of character, and all of these things feed into character. You're always going to know more about your character than you put on the page. You need to know what they have for breakfast. You need to know what's in their bureau drawers, if they have a bureau. Do they have a job? If not, how are they maintained on this planet? Who's paying for their food? All of these things are really important. And what is the person's expectation of of what she should be doing in life. What have other people told her about that? How does she understand her position? Uh, is that limiting? Is it not limiting? Is it a surprise when she does something different?
Yeah. I'm told we can sneak in one more question. So this being Earth Day, perhaps we'll go with a question about nature and climate change from Catherine, who asks, going forward, do you think nature will become a more important part of government policy?
It has to be so for a very simple reason. If the oceans die, so will we, because it is from the oceans that 60 to 80% of the oxygen that we breathe comes. And the rest of it comes from plant life on land. So once upon a time, the Earth's atmosphere was not an oxygen atmosphere, it was a methane atmosphere. And the life forms that we have now depend on oxygen because 1.9 billion years ago, marine algae made oxygen. So we have to deal with this. We have to regenerate the oceans or we will stop breathing. First of all, we'll get very stupid. We will have the mentality of somebody who's climbed Everest without an oxygen tank. Your brain gets oxygen starved. And then, of course, our high functioning technology will cease to function because we won't be able to run it. Which button? What's a button? And then it will be game over for human beings, although probably not for insects and certainly not for trees. So that's why it will have to be. And Canada has just taken a big step in that direction by kicking a lot of stimulus money into regenerating parts of nature that have been impacted by toxic oil drilling.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you, Namita, Kritika, and their colleagues at JLF and Teamwork. I'm so happy we got to chat today. Thank you so much,
Thank
Margaret.
you. It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret Atwood, Megha Majumdar. It was absolutely an honor to have you both. Margaret, thank you so much for coming to the main festival when you did. And yes, everything has changed. The world will change post COVID, perhaps for the better. We don't know. But we look forward to welcoming you back at some point, either to an online show or the festival. From all of us at the Jaipur Literature Festival, thank you truly, both of you, for everything. For those of our listeners who've joined us, we're really sorry that we haven't been able to take every question that you have posed to us. Many apologies to that. You can, of course, catch this episode again live on Facebook and on YouTube, and we hope you will continue to share it here on. Thank you all for watching, and please do remember to log on Saturday, the 25th of April, and on Sunday, the 26th of April, for a few more great conversations. The first on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 3 p.m. British Summer Time, and 10 a.m. Eastern Time is a Words and Music. Acclaimed vocalist and writer Shubha Mudgal describes how she invokes words and song to communicate the joy of Indian classical music. She's in conversation with writer and translator Ira Pandey, where she discusses the interconnectedness of the arts and their crucial role in disturbing times. Our second episode at 9 p.m. IST, 4:30 p.m. British Standard Time, and 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time is what Lucretius taught us about pandemics. Stephen Greenblatt in conversation with Tom Holland. On Sunday, 26th April, we have the political repercussions of the pandemic and Applebaum in conversation with Mihir Sharma, and we have Akbar Ira Mukhoti in conversation with Manu Pillai. For those of you who wish to stay logged on, here is an extract from our fabulous Jaipur morning music archives. Ustad Wasifuddin Dagar is an Indian classical singer of the Dhrupad Gharana, Dhrupad school, and the son of Dhrupad singer Ustad Nasir Faizuddin Dagar. He was awarded the Padma Shri in 2010. Wasifuddin Dagar's public career began on 25th February 1989 only a few days after his father's demise, when he gave his first performance. Since then, he performed at the United Nations, the Smithsonian Institutions, Yale, the City of Chicago, University of Washington, Seattle, Stanford University, University of California, Los Angeles, and several other prestigious venues. This clip revisits his performance from our morning music program in 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, please have a wonderful week. Stay safe, and we look forward to joining you on Saturday. Thank you.
Through music, we could, expand the literature. We could take it to different corners, and through literature we get the meaning. Otherwise, this were the free tones. So this is why I say it's a combination of two what creates such a beautiful ambience of music and the word. Cycle beat. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Bare mein kaun hai, kaun hai, kaun hai bare, bare mein bhole ho, bhole ho, bhole. explaining. Now in anger. है जो